Funding for the Stoller Report is made possible by a grant from the First American Title Insurance Company of New York. The First American Corporation is the nation's leading diversified provider of business information products and services that impact the major events of people's lives.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller, the host of the Stoller Report, Real Estate Trends in the Tri-State Region. The topic of today's broadcast is 2006, Where Are We Going? Industry Leaders' Perspective. My guests today include Ofer Yardeni, co-founder and managing partner, Stonehenge Partners; Norman Sterner, co-founder and chairman, managing partner, Murray Hill Properties; David Greenbaum, president of Vornado Office, part of Vornado Realty Trust; Andre Colleen, first vice president, real estate investments, PSP Investments of Montreal, Canada; Richard Mack, managing partner, managing director and principal at Apollo Real Estate Advisors; and last but definitely not least, Robert Blumenthal, managing director, real estate finance group of Deutsche Bank Securities. 2005. The beginning of 2005, $15.2 billion was sold, was traded. No one said, I remember writing an article, it was for the real estate board, and it said, I had this basic comment, cautious optimism. That's what 2005 was going to be. I don't know where it was going to be, the prices were too high, everything was going to be there. We'll never do this, we'll never get to this number. We're in December now. $23 billion. What happened? People like you bought properties. People like you bought properties. You constantly bought properties. The Canadians, the Royal Canadian Mounties, said, we want to come here. Vornado owns everything. And you financed everything. What happened? Why was 2005 such a good year? And what do you see for 2006, Mr. Yardeni?
I think that 2005 is just a continuing of what happened here in 2004, and before that, I think the level of optimism that you have in the market. Me and my partner currently own over 2,000 units in the city.
So you like residential?
I like retail and residential very, very much. And I think that we saw the trend that you have less and less apartments for rent. We noticed that...
You mean because people like him were converting apartments or building condominiums?
No, not necessarily, because how much they have been converting. People are converting and they think that like we have less supply. But it's not the case. The case, I think, is that 4 years after the events that we had at 9/11, New York is stronger than ever. I travel around the world and wherever I go, people just want to come in to invest here. So over the year, I looked at the statistics that I usually get from my rental people in my properties, and I started to see a trend that in 2003, 2004, we had musical chairs between tenants that are moving from one building to another. I started to see a trend that people are starting to come to New York from San Francisco, Los Angeles, Boston, Minnesota, and suddenly I noticed that I'm giving less concession to tenants, and in fact I raised my rents in the last 8 months over 25% on my rents. So suddenly I'm sitting with maybe from 2,300 units, we are sitting with 3-4 vacancy. So I just looked at the figures, the data that my people were providing me, and I said, I need to act before it's in the paper, before it's out.
So this year, you bought the Platinum Collection, you bought the Olivia in Vornado territory, as we would call, yes, near Penn Central, Penn Station, and then you bought Stonehenge Village.
And 86th and 102nd.
Oh, that's right. It was closed at the end of last year. Yes. But why were you so bullish on residential? I mean, Norman only likes to get to office. We'll talk about him in a second.
I think that I'm bullish on residential because, as I said before, And I always say that I'm really in the real estate business, but really my real estate has really no risk. The kind of buildings that I buy, where the average rent is $700, $800, $900 per month. So I find that this year there was kind of product that I never saw before. Properties on Park Avenue. Where in the world, me from Israel, have a chance to buy something on Park Avenue? I mean, I thought that Park Avenue is only for the richest people in America, or for the Rudin, Resnick, or the other families. Here suddenly, me owning a property on Park Avenue, I mean, at $400 a square foot.
So we have the we have the former paratrooper from Israel.
I was never a parachute. I was
Israeli
a tour guide.
Israeli Defense Force.
What was it?
Everybody's a parachuter. I'm a tour guide.
He's the tour guy. I'm a traveler. He's the tour guy. And then we have the gentleman off here from Canada, or Montreal, okay, or Canada. You come in here, and you decide that, and you, as we said prior to the show, you decide that you want to invest with somebody you've dealt with so many years, and you love New York too. Why?
Well, listen, New York is a very liquid market, from a global investor point of view. Like Ofer said before, and I think everybody would agree, a lot of investors like to come and invest in New York. You talk about $23 billion of transaction. In the whole Canada, this year, we will have less than $15 billion US of transaction. So a market that offers $23 billion of transaction just in New York.
But you have this money from the Canadian Royal Canadian Mounted money. You have this, and you can invest it anywhere in the world. And you decide that you want to come to New York City. You could invest with Richard Mack, who might be competing with you. You can invest with in offices over here. Why do you invest in the residential market, and why do you think 2006 is going to be so good?
Well, we do invest in many parts of the world, but why we like New York and why we like residential, I will call this a niche market for us. The thing I like about the residential we bought, as Ofer said, it's long term. A lot of projects this year were sold for condo. There's less inventory in rental units. So we buy these apartment buildings. We know we could work out the rents over time. We feel it's fairly secured. And at the same time, there's less people that want to do it. The competition, you see it in the condo conversion. This is why we did not play that game at all. We see less competition in these rent control and rent stabilized building. So we think we could get a little edge. We buy it from sellers that I've had it for so many years. So it gives us a little angle. We like that strategy.
Right. But Michael, just to say, I want to remind you something. That yes, we bought in 2005. But we started buying it 1995 when there was no capital and nobody people on the street. So we have been buying consistently. We believe, Andre and I
believe that everyone, with the exception of the banker over here, has been buying at least since 1995. David has probably been buying since 1980.
Yes, absolutely.
Apollo didn't start till 1994, but the Mack family and everything was buying in Queens, going back years. Norman, you've been buying since... No, I don't want to say...
When he was a kid, he was
1970. Yeah. So everybody's been buying. But what does somebody want to own in New York? This year, Norman, you bought probably, in my opinion, even though the MetLife building sold, you bought the classiest property. You bought 450 Lexington Avenue. You bought this property over there that has the top finishes, a great property. Why did you pick on that? I mean, in the past you bought B+, maybe A-. Here you bought a double A property. How did you decide to buy something like that?
Opportunity. We're very opportunistic. We have a very small board. The advisory committee to the fund is 5 people, 4 of which are in my office. It came to us with a gamble in terms of a termination option to the largest tenant in the property 45 days hence. We looked around and made the gamble that they would not terminate their lease.
But besides 450 Lex, you also bought 417 Fifth Avenue.
I repurchased it.
You repurchased it.
One of our investment bank partners decided that they wanted out of the real estate business. In the words of my partners at Olympus, they wanted to go play golf for 4 years.
So Olympus, who was your investor, like an Apollo, which we'll get to in a second, and needless to say, as everyone knows, it's too quiet. I really get upset. I need some emotion over here. So Olympus said they wanted to get out of the real estate business?
They had just sold the $1.2 billion residential portfolio to the people from Dubai. The last remaining...
Dubai! We'll get to them in a second, yes.
Those are the folks that bought their portfolio. They had one last remaining property, which was ours in New York. They called up and said, we want out. We decided that we wanted to stay on the property, so we bought them out and brought General Electric in.
But let's look at this. 417 is on 38th and 39th Street and Fifth Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
Directly across the street from that, there were 2 or 3 residential office buildings which have been demolished. They're going to put up a residential tower.
As a whole.
There's a hole. There's going to be a residential tower. 485 Fifth Avenue was sold this year. This is good flipping. Purchased for $54 million in April, sold in June for $88 million, and they're going to build a residential. Mm-hmm. Why don't you follow the lead of Mr. Yardeni and Mr. Colleen and make 417 a residential tower?
Because all of these folks who live in the wonderful buildings that they own have to work somewhere. And I'm in the commercial office building, not in the residential
So you like
building.
the commercial, and you feel the commercial is going to do well?
When I look at a 400,000-foot building and it's residential, I see 300 tenants. When I look at a commercial office building at 400,000 feet, I look at 10 tenants.
But you know what? Prior to the show, Ofa says, I like the fact, I think maybe you've said to me in the past, I don't want to put words, I'd rather have a few people, in case one person leaves, it's not going to hurt me. If one of those big tenants leave, I'm really going to hurt.
That's
right?
why he likes chocolate
No, but
and I like vanilla.
the fact is that 417, if you say what's the best use for this property, is as a residential. I mean, because the price per square foot that you get as an office is $35, $40.
Wait a second, he's
50.
keeping it as an office building.
He doesn't have a choice. There are leases on this property. What do you
You
want
never
to do
heard
with
of
the
somebody
people?
buying out leases?
Would you like to buy the property?
No, thank you. I'm not a developer.
Wait a second, but let's also go to Fifth Avenue. Mr. Mack and his partners, Emmis, are now selling a couple of properties, 509 Fifth Avenue, right next to Mr. Scossi's new building, the CIT Tower, 535 Fifth Avenue, and 545 Fifth Avenue. Why have you, who is a fund, decided that you don't want to own office buildings in New York City?
I don't think we've made a decision that we don't want to own office buildings. In fact,
I apologize for saying.
No, if we could own every office building in New York and every residential building in New York, and we had a low enough cost of capital, and we could sit on it long enough, I'd make that bet every day. The question becomes an opportunity cost of capital, where we can create the greatest returns for our investors. Our perspective is not just New York centric. It happens to be that this is our home market, that we have earmarked for development and redevelopment in residential and office in this market approximately $400 million in equity, which is a lot of deals.
That's
to do
right.
over
It's
the
not
next
too
2 to 3
shabby.
years.
I mean, with the exception of Vornado, it's nothing.
But when we come into these markets, we hope
We're not finished with you.
We're going to be picked on tonight.
we hope to understand and take the market as it is, buy wholesale, create value, and sell retail. And that is our game. And if we had a lower cost of capital, if we didn't have an opportunity cost of capital to put money into Germany, London, Japan, Los Angeles, at some higher rates of return
But
than perhaps.
I'm here with people who believe, and I believe, that New York City is the best market. It's the greatest city. It's a place that you want to own.
I agree with you, but our investors pay us to diversify for them. And I think while we believe generally that New York is one of the great places to own, I think buying retail today is you better have a very long-term perspective and be able to hold for a long time because the returns on an interim basis could disappoint.
You know, talking about returns, I think Norman mentioned Olympus sold their residential to Dubai. Out of nowhere, there's this little company, little country, Dubai or whatever they are, and they decide to buy this building, the old Hemsley building, the old Penn Central building, and they bought it off market, or they closed.
No.
They bought it on
Darcy
the
had a
appraisal.
full auction.
Full auction. They paid $700 million. 705, 4.3 cap, which means a 4% return on their money. And why? You know, why these people spend this? Andre, you're from Canada. Why could they spend so much money?
Well,
I mean, enough oil, but, you know, besides...
I think you just said it before. They have a low cost of capital. They just don't know where to put all the money that they have. There's so much limitation because of their religion that certain type of investment they can't do. So when they could find certain assets they could do, they go and just do it. And we compete against them, I'm sure you are, all over the world. They pay, I lost a deal in Germany. I was the second bidder, 240 million euro. These guys offered 290 million euro. I mean,
look, this year they
big.
You know, they bought 230, and then 2 months before they bought the Essex House. I mean, I realize the hospitality industry is doing well, but, you know, that's it. Now the 800-pound gorilla. 18 million square... I know you don't...
Some weight?
18 million square feet of office space? That's how much you guys own?
In New York, Manhattan.
In Manhattan?
Yep.
18. Norman, how many square feet of office space do you own in Manhattan?
About 5.5 million.
5.5 million.
I'm very small.
No,
Okay, but
that's a very nice number.
To be fair, the 18 million is what we control. Our ownership, 16.5. So we're not going to exaggerate.
Now,
Still 5.5.
so what is the 800-pound gorilla who really has a long-term goal? I mean, you bought a property, or you control the property. Since you control 32% of the shares of Alexander's, which you happen to have the same chairman on Vornado and Alexander's, for some reason, I don't know why, it said Vornado at 730 Lexington Avenue. But that was an Alexander's property, Alexander's land. I think it was their property. Am I correct?
If you read it properly, it said an Alexander's asset developed, managed by Vornado.
Oh, okay. So we have that property over there,
Yes.
and you built this for Mayor Mike's company. Sure. They were the first retail. How many square feet of retail over there?
The entire development's about 1.4 million square feet. Mike has 700,000. The retail component's a little less than 250,000 feet.
Right. And I remember when you were on the show last year, we were talking that you did relatively well on the underground retail because Home Depot went in at a cheap basis for you. But let's get to so this year you had some space available. And how difficult was it to get Citigroup to take the additional space?
First, I'll tell you, I wish I had the space back today.
Why?
We under-rented the space.
So you
but that's
made...
true of any high-end space in New York today. Space that is great space, view corridors, 640 Fifth Avenue in our portfolio, 731 Lex, 888 7th Avenue. High-end space today in New York has already spiked in the market. Different from what I'll call kind of generic office product in the marketplace, which we're seeing strength, but no real spiking in rents. That product, we've seen in the last 18 months probably rent kicks of 25% plus.
So what does somebody pay? You know, since we want, we're on the CUNY network, we're also on the internet. What does somebody pay for rent to be in a building like 731 Lexington Avenue? What's the rent today?
If I had the space back today?
If you had the space today.
We would ask for the space probably about 110 and expect to do a deal somewhere about $100 a foot.
$100 a foot for rental. Norman, you have 450 Lex. You have a number of properties. What's rent going over there for?
$85.
$85 a foot. Richard?
We're a land lease.
Time Warner Center.
Time Warner Center.
Well, we signed a lease with ourselves.
No, how can you talk about yourself? No, come on. But
in fairness, we don't have any space. You know, our deal with Time Warner Center, was that Time Warner would buy their entire building, and in fact, we negotiated a put of a few 100,000 feet to them, which we exercised. Now, we exercised it when we thought we would have a hard time getting $60 a foot for the space. In fact, if we had that space, we would have sat with it for a while, and maybe we would have eventually leased it at $80 a foot. But if we had that space today, it's probably worth $100 a foot.
But what that tells you, which is extraordinary, is that put was exercised not that long ago. What was it?
Well, it was not that long after 9/11, but it was probably a year after 9/11. that we
But
exercised
Rob,
that
you
put.
know, you're the capital market specialist. You're the banker, the lender. I mean, what do you see the New York market like?
I see it's highly competitive. I mean, everyone here has multiple.
But they're all good friends.
We're all good friends. I mean, it's very hard to, as a provider of capital, both on a global basis, both debt and equity, it's very difficult to differentiate yourself with any of these guys. Because if I ask everyone how many term sheets they get in an acquisition they make today, it's multiple term sheets.
Right, but I know that my friend, Mr. Yardeni, prefers to deal with small banks. He doesn't want to deal with...
They're not small banks.
No,
but
not
they
small
are
banks. No
Norfolk and New York Community
Right,
Bank.
these
or
are large
M&T.
banks, but they're not doing
They're on Wall Street.
collateralized mortgages. They're not doing something with defeasance. They're trying to make life easier. They're large banks.
There's multiple. What I'm trying to say is there's multiple sources of capital, and it's very difficult to differentiate yourself as a provider of capital to any of these principles. And the only way to do it is through relationship and delivering of on your promises to close. And another way is a lower cost of capital, because is there a difference between a Deutsche Bank and a Lehman Brothers or a Morgan Stanley or another? We're all high quality shops. It's a matter of relationship and delivering. I think where you do differentiate yourself is in the more highly structured transactions where it requires lease up or some value add situation. And also timeliness of delivering, because I don't know how long it takes you to find a property and close on it, but very often it's opportunistic. And we were involved in a situation with you where you were involved in a building where you thought you had it, you needed a term sheet that day, I think, for a couple $100 million. We worked all night, got the term sheets done, got the commitment, and unfortunately for us and unfortunately for you, what you thought you had, you didn't.
Right.
Because not all promises are made and kept by buyers and sellers. So it's the ability to not only go to contract immediately, unconditionally, right, and go hard, as you as a principal, and also having a financier being able to do that in an amazingly fast period of time. So it's speed of delivery and certainty of delivery, which is going to drive today's market, because no one has the luxury, given the amount of capital out there, to go through a bidding process. You have to try to preempt it. You have to try to get in there quickly and get it done.
None of us are economists, and I have no idea, but I heard an economist speak this morning, and they said, what do you think the rates are going to be in the next 3 years? The T-bill has basically stayed, the 10-year Treasury has remained between 410 and 450 over the last year. What's the perspective? Do you see, Andre, you look at this, you've been involved with investments for years. Do you see the Treasury remaining pretty close to this?
Yes, I've been predicting rate increases for the past 3 years. I've been wrong all the time. I don't see any reason why.
It's like me making a real estate investment.
I don't see any reasons for rates to increase significantly over the next few years.
So if we're talking about rates remaining like this, if Norman Sterner is buying a property or Ofer Yardeni is buying a property, and I know you guys have bought a number of properties, would you lock in fixed rate money? Would you want a fixed rate loan? It's like a residential person on the office market. Do you think it's wise to do a fixed rate loan today?
So according,
It all depends on your business plan with the property. If you're planning to hold it for 5 to 10 years, I would lock the rate today, because that's one thing that I cannot really control. I can, if the market can improve or not, I can deal with vacancy, with expenses I can work with. But if suddenly, even if I create value and the rates are spiking 2-3%, all the creation of value that I did in a moment can disappear. If I'm going on a vacant building where I need to add value, I'd rather go with floating
rate,
because I'll stable the property and then I will fix it. But I'll tell you something. I bought a property with Andre last year, and we took a fixed rate loan. We had a mortgage of $10 million, and we are making a huge profit, and we will pay 4% prepayment penalty. So it's not a big deal.
There was enough profit
If
there.
we are making 100% on our equity, and I have to pay a few $100,000, that's the cost of doing the business.
You know what's interesting? What I'm seeing in real life, I mean, everyone makes the argument today, when you have a 10-year below 5%, or even when the 10-year was below 4%, you'd be crazy not to lock in and fix rate. But if you look at the historical trends of real estate ownership, it's like, how long does one own their own home? How often does one move? And I think it's every 5 years, the average homeowner or something moves. Now, in the commercial terms, I really wonder, other than the big institutions who buy something, hold it long term, most real estate owners, developers, funds, they tend to are constantly changing.
But I don't think that this is coming to New York City. I think that in New York City, most of the guys that buy, I'm not speaking about the big gorillas that are buying those huge office buildings, but on the residential business.
You calling Norman a huge gorilla?
Listen, 5 million square feet for me is a very big owner of.
But the point I'm trying to is there's so many restrictions on fixed rate mortgage financing in terms of the lack of flexibility, and real estate's a value add game.
Yes.
You never know when the next buyer is going to come along and offer you a price you can't refuse. For you to go ahead and deal with servicers, getting the lockout renegotiated, paying those fees, the lack of flexibility, you could put in place today with hedging technology, prepayable loans that are fixed either through a cap or a swap, and have the flexibility you need to meet the opportunities. I mean, you had mentioned during our pre-television show dinner that you bought something and unforeseen to you wound up selling it for a big profit. If you had a fixed rate financing on it that didn't allow assumption, you would have been stuck.
You're in trouble.
You're in trouble. So there's a lot of value. You create value all the time.
I'm going to say something else.
But didn't you bought a number of
I'm
properties
a big
this year?
proponent of floating rate,
So am I.
flexible financing.
At the same time, our business is a capital-intensive business. What are the expenses that we have? Single biggest expense, taxes. Operating expenses, utilities being a huge expense, but the single biggest expense, obviously, is capital. We are a capital-intensive business. And I think, in some sense, I have no idea where interest rates are going to be, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. Generally, I think fairly stable. But I will say to you, if rates move, the impact of that cost of capital with high leverage on a number of properties that are being bought, we could see issues. And today we announced 8887 7th Avenue. We just closed a fixed rate 10-year loan. Now we're a $20 billion company.
Right,
So
and,
for us
you,
to have
and
closed
that
a
loan was what, a 560?
$350 million. We bought a building for $118 million. We just took out $350 million of financing. We bought the building in 1998.
In America.
It's not a big deal.
Not bad.
No, it's not good.
At somewhere hovering around 5.5%. And we said to ourselves, that's an asset which we're clearly owning long term, and we'll go.
It's a question of long term. Let's leave the pricing right now. Let's talk about the marketplace and different type of asset classes and everything. Richard, you and your partners, the related companies, own the Time Warner Center. Time Warner Center, there were questions about how the retail would do. There were questions even in the minds of the owners of how the retail. There were definitely questions in the minds of this host that, since Trump Tower basically was a failure, the Manhattan Mall was a failure, Coen Brothers property on 3rd Avenue of a mall was a failure. I mean, Mike Fascitelli said it was Steve Ross who said that you're achieving sales of $1,200 a square foot. That's the highest sales in the nation for a shopping center.
Well, I think that what you're talking about are a lot of poorly conceived multi-story retail schemes which were not designed with the New York consumer in mind, and which I think failed to be anchored properly. So the two things that I think we've done really well is we've got a great anchor in Whole Foods. It's an anchor that brings people not only to shop for groceries, but to come for lunch, to browse, to just look at what's being offered. And it is a very differentiated product to what you find elsewhere in New York. In fact, there's only one other Whole Foods in the area. So I think that's an important anchor. And we had a lot of opportunities with other tenants to anchor it. Now, when you go to the retail aspect of the transaction, when you go to the upper floors, one of the reasons that vertical retail had failed was that there was no reason to go up. You went up, it got uglier and uglier and uglier. When you go up in Time Warner Center, your view improves, there is a greater sense of openness, and there's a rationale.
So you're going to say to
go
Donald
up.
Trump that he didn't have views at Trump Tower?
I'm saying his retail had crap for views. There's no reason to go upstairs.
There's no views.
In
views.
those retail. Why would you go upstairs? It wasn't inviting. It was narrow and constrained if you walked the halls up there. There was no reason to be upstairs. There was nothing drawing you up there. And not only do we create views and an atmosphere and an environment where people want to go up, but we've also created destination restaurants up there which further enhance the experience to go up and further give a reason to go up. So it was I think it was just well conceived, to be quite frank.
Right. Now we spoke about Whole Foods just now, and I don't want to say anything, but Vornado took the old Bradley's department store on 14th Street, which originally was the Mays department store, and they have built another Whole Foods store.
Right, it's a third, I'm sorry.
A third, and which I've heard through my own sources that sales are exceeding yours. Hard to believe. They're probably doing in excess of $60 million during their first year over there.
Interesting story, by the way. There's a residential site that's being sold right around Time Warner. And the brokers are now touting it as it should have a premium for land value because there's the Whole Foods premium for the residential land.
Place to shop.
Avalon Bay built Avalon Bay Christie on Christie Street and Houston Street.
Yeah.
In the Lower East Side, and as I always said, because one of my son's friends tells the story about his parents dropping him off in the Lower East Side saying, we fought for 50 years for us to move out of this neighborhood, and now you're moving into this neighborhood. Now, Avalon Christie is going to have the largest Whole Foods, a 78,000 square foot triplex Whole Foods, the largest in the Northeast. I mean, Whole Foods, the city's becoming Whole Foods. Trader Joe's is opening in a couple of weeks. Balducci opens on Thursday. I mean, New York City is becoming a supermarket, but not regular supermarkets. Quality, high-priced supermarkets.
Well, you've always had the people charging too much for groceries in New York. Okay, if you go up to Harlem, those are some of your highest prices for a can of coffee any place in the world. Now, so what's changing is instead of being overcharged for the convenience, you're actually getting a very high quality product, and people are having a shopping experience as well. And there's a lot of disposable income in New York, and if you do it better, which I think Whole Foods does, you're going to attract a very large share of those dollars.
And it's not just that people don't cook necessarily in their home. People, when they go to Whole Foods, they buy the finished product.
The prepared food.
The prepared food, that's something very important. I mean, most of the people that live are young, they're always on the rush. And the fact that they can buy the prepared food and just move on, and they want good quality. So if they can get it, why not?
Let's go down. I just brought, we went to the Lower East Side. We talked about Houston Street. We spoke about Christie Street. Let's go all the way downtown. Let's go to Lower Manhattan. Prior to the show, I asked everyone in the group, what was your opinion of Lower Manhattan? And since I'm very blunt and I like an opinion, I mean, Rob, you even work on Lower Manhattan.
I'm the only one, unfortunately, or fortunately, has to take the number 5 train downtown every day and actually move from Midtown to Lower Manhattan. So I'm probably the resident expert. Everyone else is sort of voyeur. I live there.
So if you weren't the banker, if you were in the seats of my 5 other people over here, as an investor,
I would say Deutsche Bank, right after 9/11, as I understand it, and I'm not privy to all the information, had a choice whether they had entered into a contract, whether they had to live up to that contract after 9/11 because it was a material event. I'm not sure, but they chose actively to close on 60 Wall, which was a pivotal event for not only Deutsche Bank, for New York City. They were the first ones to restate their commitment to downtown in the biggest way possible. When I moved down to Wall Street that day, I'll never forget it, there was nothing there. We had our building. There wasn't even black cars down there. There was literally no services and literally no place really to eat. It was a dead zone. And literally in, 3 years, restaurants, my entire block facing my 60 Wall Street is now all residential. And it's beginning to become a dynamic community, and you really can't park in the street because there's no parking spaces. So the transition is unbelievable. And frankly, for a place to work, despite my colleagues will just say, kill me when they go back to work, it frankly is a good place to work because you focus on work. There aren't any distractions. You go to Midtown, it's like going to Nirvana. It's going to on a vacation because everybody
Right, but
there's
I mean,
beautiful
but I think
great
that's a good
stores.
point.
Yes.
Ofer,
Downtown,
Ofer,
you work.
you
Downtown,
have
work,
bought
right?
properties.
You go to
you
Time
have
Warner Center, you don't want to
right,
work.
but you have bought properties in
Now I
New
know my
York.
problem.
for many years.
You got to move my offices.
I mean,
Downtown to work.
I have people here, David, through the Mentney Company, Vornado. You guys are in Lower Manhattan. What's your?
The most important thing that Rob said is what? He lives there.
He works there.
He lives there.
He also lives there.
I don't live there. I work
No,
there.
he works there. He
I
doesn't
work
live there.
God forbid I should live there. I work.
That's-
No, wait.
Oh.
He said. Oh, you missed. No, wait.
Yeah, I thought so too.
No, he said.
he said it.
No,
I
he
did
said,
say live, but
he
I
said,
work.
he said he works there. Now, you've owned the property. You have one property left there.
We have two properties.
You have two properties.
20 Broad Street and 40 Fulton Street.
And what do you want to do with 20 Broad and 40 Fulton Street?
40 Fulton will be converted to residential. All the leases come up in 2009, 2010.
It will be converted to residential, like everything else, condominium?
Not necessarily. It could be a rental building. I mean, we are long-term owners, and my guess is we may well do just rental housing.
And what about 20 Broad?
20 Broad's a unique asset. It's the stock exchange headquarters building. It is tenanted, in fact, 80% by the New York Stock Exchange. I mean, it is not a, quote, generic normal office building downtown. It really is.
Vornado buys property all over. Vornado bought the retail shops at the Hotel Westbury this year for $117 million. You buy other property. You bought another shops on Madison Avenue. You're building all this. Would you buy downtown today?
I think our primary focus today remains Midtown.
Midtown and Midtown office, Midtown retail?
Midtown everything. We want to own all of Midtown. You know,
You do, 18 million
We
square
are in the
feet.
business of retail, we're in the business of residential, we're in the business of office. The ability to be in Midtown, have breakfast over here, in 3 minutes get over there, 4 minutes get over there. The ability to transact business the way we do, running from meeting to meeting to meeting, that's what makes Midtown so great.
Ofer and Andre, I mean, you've invested in New York for 14 years.
Yes.
You've never bought anything low in
No.
Manhattan.
Not that
But
I
we
did
tried
not.
this year. We looked at several buildings this year.
We'll-
We just didn't
Yes, I
like
remember that building.
No, but what you're speaking downtown, Michael, is speaking about the financial sector, the Wall Street, and I have been.
I'm not
through
talking
the
Soho.
years.
I'm not
I'm
talking-
not talking so. So I'll always buy. I like it, but I've been consistently saying that I never met a tenant, one commercial tenant in New York, that will tell me he loves to go downtown. I mean, to the financial district. Nobody wants to be downtown. And the fact is that without incentives, that they are subsidy that they are getting, this is the only reason why tenants are moving to downtown. And I'm completely opposed to the way they are doing those incentives, because what the administration here is making a Robin Hood. They are taking tenants from Midtown, and that's the fact, tenants from Midtown, and subsidize and giving them lower rents in downtown. Don't misunderstand, I will support downtown, and I want downtown to be very, very strong, but don't take it from Midtown. And the way I would give the support is for tenants that are coming from New Jersey or from out of state. To those tenants, I will give the incentives to come to downtown. But the fact is that people in New York are talking about location, location, location. In New York, everything is a location, but it's all about transportation.
But wait a second.
tough to be
There's a
downtown.
major transportation facility.
Michael, I have been with you downtown. We went to a terrible closing that took 24 hours, and I almost got lost there going in those
I
big
took
canyons.
you to Century 21. It was the first time you ever.
Yeah, first time I was in Century 21, and it was an unbelievable experience for me. And but
nice days.
walking
It was.
in downtown at night, it's very dark. I felt like I'm in a big canyon. It was windy. And as David said, you walk out in Midtown, you enjoy, you smile, you feel like you're in the center of the world. Everybody wants to be here. And this is why I never look to buy properties downtown, of which I call it the financial
Norman,
district.
you've owned properties downtown. You're selling your last property downtown?
David's and my property are attached by an umbilical cord on the third floor. But we have owned 22 Cortlandt Street and 83 Maiden Lane and 44 Wall. We're in a unique position as opposed to my other colleagues here in that we're traders. We go into business with an investment bank. We get 30 months to fix it up, shine it up, lease it up, and the next 30 months to get out.
So you polish the apple,
And then take a bite out of it and sell it.
and
So
he just cures the apple. He keeps it
he
there.
grows the trees.
He grows the trees.
Well, no, we're continuously working the assets, though.
Yeah.
We're
No, I didn't say you
We're
weren't.
taking buildings. We're taking the Fuller building, 595 Madison Avenue. We're converting that to residential. And
Not the entire building, the top of the building. Right?
We're going to be converting the entire. All the leases in that building come up in 2009.
So 595 on the corner of 57th and Madison will become a residential, because that's the best use.
Michael,
We talked earlier about the use of buildings, values. I mean, where we are today, clearly in a cycle, is there is no office rent. The $100 a foot, you can pick whatever number you want. There's no office rent that equates to high-end residential values today.
You know, but we were talking prior, but I think, and Tom Swazi was with us prior to the program, where do people live? I mean, I have 1 million people who have the opportunity to watch the show in New York City. I have the working people.
Well, we had our, to bring up the point
Right.
on television here, we had our NYU Capital Markets Conference last week. And my concern is, and my belief is what makes New York City a vital city for the long-term health of the city is the diversity, both economically and culturally. And that's the workforce. And if you take away that diversity, you're taking away the very essence of New York City.
But where...
And right now, all these people are
he's going to
creating-
convert. He's taking...
But he's converting for the rich. He's converting for the people who can afford $3,000 a foot. And the point is that we're creating Emerald City out of Manhattan.
Right, but Richard is doing both.
So
He's
the idea is
converting.
how
He's
do we-
converting a certain property. I mean, you're taking property in Brooklyn, you're taking property in Tribeca, you're taking property near the Time Warner Center, and you're making luxury condominiums. And now you're doing what in the Bronx?
well, let me make a general statement. I want to just go back to downtown for a second. Our problem with downtown is not necessarily that no one will ever want to be there. I agree, it's much less in demand than Midtown. It's just that it's not really priced at what we think is a big enough discount to Midtown to go there. A lot of what we've been trying to do is focus on those areas where we think we're getting paid to move away from Midtown, where there are hundreds of people that want to get in there and own. And I think all this capital we're seeing coming to New York, we'd like to try to take advantage of, and we think that eventually there's going to be a trickle down to other parts of New York. And so we have this general big belief in New York. We understand that there needs to be housing for other people, and therefore we're moving out to the boroughs. We're in Brooklyn, we're in the Bronx, we're in Harlem, we're in Queens, and we're buying workforce housing, and we're trying to improve it and create a better quality of life. We're making a fundamental bet on the workers in New York and on improving their quality of life. And if you go out to these boroughs, you'd be surprised to just see how much things have improved. And so what you were referring to is that we're buying 1,800 units in the Bronx and providing instead of charging a market rate price for the units, we're going to give a very big discount to the existing homeowners there and try to create affordable housing. And we're doing this in quasi-partnership with the city, and we think that this is a great opportunity for us, but also shows the vibrancy of New York. And we think the boroughs right now in New York, as we look to put dollars to work, be it in Flushing, Queens, or in Soundview, in the Bronx, offer a great risk reward and a very long-term
Let's get
way
to the
to play
boroughs.
New York.
And I think you were awarded with your partners, the Rockefeller Group and a local developer, the redevelopment of the municipal lot in Flushing. Flushing is an area with maybe 60 different dialects. That's what people say. You're going to build retail. You're going to build residential. Are you building a hotel?
Yes.
You're building a hotel. In another section of Queens, Vornado wanted to build a Walmart, which many people believe, and I'm probably one of them, it would have been nice that there could have been a Walmart or a BJ's in the city. Vornado is building a mixed-use residential and retail in Regal Park. Related is building mixed-use retail all over. There's a lot of things happening in the other boroughs. What's everybody's opinion of certain boroughs? Like there's Tishman Speyer. We mentioned you've done work with Tishman Speyer in Australia and other things. What's the opinion? Long Island City has been this undervalued asset. Everybody said Cameron O'Ganian said to me once on my show, I used to ride through and I love the view of Manhattan, but I would never invest in Long Island City. Now he's building on the water in Long Island City. Well, what's an opinion of you? Somebody who is a big residential developer, you an office developer, you both residential and office, you an investor, you the 850-pound gorilla, you the lender, on places like Long Island City and downtown Brooklyn.
It would be a surprise to you. I personally like the boroughs very much. I mean, Queens and Long Island City and all the way on Northern Boulevard as I drive to work every day. Unfortunately, my cost of capital does not allow me with my partners to buy properties there, because the same, if I buy in Queens and I can buy a 2 or 3% return, I rather buy in Manhattan 1% return, because when I buy those apartment buildings in the city that are average $700-800 a month and I create a turnover, I can take that unit to $3,500.
Yeah, but I don't see a lot of stuff trading in the boroughs at 1-2%.
I think that they are trading at 3%, and if you think that they are not trading at 3%, is when you finish with the numbers after a year on operation, they will see that they are trading at 3 or 4%, the multifamily.
Well, I guess that's what makes horse races.
Absolutely.
Right, but you know,
but the fact is that when you turn a unit in the boroughs, especially in Queens, and you can take the rent from $600, you can get it to $1,200, and it stays rent stabilized. Here I can take it from $600 to $3,500, and it becomes decontrolled, and I can go and condo this building.
But what do you?
So it will take me a lot longer in my business plan, double the time, the amount, and a lot more capital, and I really cannot go and execute.
You know, I think here's a question, Andre. Someone once said to me, perhaps on one of my shows, that when I go to a foreign investor and I show them Manhattan, they know Manhattan. If I show them Long Island City, they said, what's Long Island City? Or I say downtown Brooklyn, what's downtown Brooklyn? Even though, Richard, you've done well with the properties in Nassau County, Long Island, that's Nassau County is not what the investor likes, right?
It is still a very local market, in my opinion. I mean, I've been coming here and investing here for the past 12, 13 years. I think I stepped foot in Brooklyn for the first time a year or so ago.
It was on your way to Petaluma or Julius?
If you look at where the investors are, the institutional investors in Long Island or Westchester, it's the REITs. It's either Rexon, it's Matt Cowley.
But I'm talking about the foreign investors.
But I'm saying there aren't really foreign investors.
It's not on the radar screen,
right.
and again, it takes a lot to know the market.
So the foreign investor is not interested in downtown Brooklyn or Long Island City.
But I think also the
Not
returns.
yet.
Not yet.
The returns are still not as good as New York City.
Now, David?
I just don't agree with that.
They only print so many avenues. Okay, so in the 1970s, late 60s, early 70s, we built 6th Avenue. We built 7th Avenue and 8th Avenue in the last 2 decades. Manhattan still is an island. There are only so many avenues, and I mean, for us, our development, first of all, our perspective these days is with where pricing is, it's the development business. We think the returns that we need to achieve realistically can virtually only be achieved in the development business. And our horizons remain in New York. Yes, we have a project in Regal Park, of course. But our real focus is Manhattan, will remain in Manhattan. And
Come on, you bought a Warbaum shopping center right next to Co-op City you're redeveloping also. Hundreds of thousands square feet, I know
exactly.
it's very small.
Remember, we're a $20 billion company. Our focus is going to remain in Manhattan, and obviously our major focus remains in what really becomes our back door, because one thing we haven't talked at all about is the gateway to the west. What happens to the
That's
west side of
exactly
New
what I
York?
want to say. Ofer buys a building this year in Vornado territory. For my view, is Vornado territory is the Penn Station area. I mean, you have 6 million square feet in that neighborhood?
We just lost a couple million square feet, if that's the case.
No, in that 8 million square feet in that neighborhood. For Ofer buys a property, a magnificent property, the Olivia, on the corner of 33rd, 34th Street and 8th, between 8th and 9th Avenue. Magnificent views. You and the related companies, your partners sometimes, are redeveloping the Moynihan
Moynihan
Station.
train station, yes.
And then there was, Mayor Mike and Mr. Mr. Doctoroff, otherwise known as, okay, I'll say Mr. Doctoroff, and we were going to do, the Hudson Yards. There's no stadium there right now. So that's probably, as you just said, the most logical place for office development.
Transportation. We still need transportation. We need the number 7 line. The city, the MTA, I believe, are committed to completing that construction. I think when that happens, and it's going to happen in a reasonable period of time, we are going to see the west side begin to burgeon.
So are we going to see, like in 1993, nobody really wanted to be in Times Square. Ofer bought a property with Andre, the Ritz, magnificent property, 48th Street off 8th Avenue. You bought it at a major bargain. The other bank...
No, it's not a major bargain
Oh, I'm
at all.
sorry it wasn't a bargain.
Because when we bought it in 1996, we paid the price.
And we could not finance the building. We paid all cash.
We
were
went-
saying lenders say nobody goes there.
But what
we
I'm-
went to Citibank, and we asked for financing, and they tell us we paid too much.
They
And
should
they
have
were
gone
not,
to Deutsche Bank, but they were called Bank of
there was no Deutsche Bank
They were
there.
not in
Nobody. There was
business
no lending in 1996
Yeah, that's true.
at December. People thought that we are just two crazy guys.
But let's go to that. 1996, you bought that. Before the Lion King opened up on
You're right.
42nd Street, who wanted to go to those towers? George Klein was the visionary with Prudential. I don't have to tell
Think
you.
about when Cravath went to 8th Avenue. They were absolute pioneers.
And that was a failure. Wasn't the Worldwide Towers originally a failure?
And what's happened today?
It's hot as hell.
Exactly right.
I
So you
realized-
see the...
I
yes.
realized, Michael, when I started to buy real estate, that I'm not smart enough to time the market, and I cannot create in 30 months with those investment bankers a program that I can turn a building. So I try
have a
to
good
find
investment
no.
banker.
I try to find partners that will go with my vision for long term. If we need to own the property 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, as long as we can create value and create cash flow. So thank God I was able to find those partners that have been with me for the last 12 years. And every property that we bought, if it was on the west side, we were a little bit pioneer on buying them, but we had a business plan and we executed on that business plan. And the same thing with the Olivia. I mean, when I figured that Vornado has 8 million square feet in that area, I said, we are the luckiest people in the world. They are going to do all the work, and we are just going to enjoy the fruit from all those, from their creation. So we are just sitting here, and thank you, David.
I was going to say, you
And
say thank you.
I always say
I
thank
purposely, moved the seats away so...
and the fact that
Yes.
they are going to develop the new station, I mean, we are going to enjoy that fruit.
Since we're trying to talk about 2006, the perspective, everybody, there are so many permits for new luxury condominiums all over. What do you see happening in the condo marketplace? I mean, Richard, you're probably the most opportunity to discuss it because you're developing. Where do you see the condominium marketplace in New York City in 2006?
Well, we've been very lucky to date, and I keep waiting for the music to stop. And so I don't see us doing any more ground-up condo development in New York for at least a little while. But I should never say never. Maybe we'll just stumble upon the next great deal. But we're seeing our condo sales slow in the projects that we have. We are expecting record bonuses in Wall Street this year, and we'll see what happens.
Sure, all Blumenthal's people.
Well, I think we're going to have some very positive reaction to that, and I think the condo market's going to be strong.
Do you think
for at least until the end of the summer, and beyond that, I don't have it. I don't have.
Someone made a comment today, and I feel this way. The condo market in Florida, people put money down and they may never close. The condo market in New York, people put money down and they want to live in these places.
It's very different. It's very different
It's
here.
a totally different market. People are buying condos in Toledo, Ohio. New York City is this vibrant market. I want to bring out something. Many people have heard the name Tom Barrack. He is, as they say in Fortune, the king of real estate. He's cashing out. He says, I play polo. I love polo. He says he believes today, the U.S., it's too much money chasing too few good deals. The amateurs are going to get trampled. He explains, taking seasoned horsemen, you should get out of the turf. I'm getting out of the turf in the United States. Do you think Barrack is right or wrong?
I think Barrack's returns weren't so good in the U.S.
Yes. Norman, you...
I think this is probably the greatest city to invest in the United States and maybe the world. I'm expecting more of the same in 2006, possibly at a lower grade. We're not looking to make 25 and 30% a year, but I think it'll keep going in the teens and in the high teens. You just have to pick your spots. I've listened to these folks.
Hard to believe. We've done 58 minutes. I have to say goodbye to all my guests. I'd like to thank Ofer Yardeni, Stonehenge Partners, Norman Stern, Murray Hill Properties, David Greenbaum, Vornado Realty Trust, Andre Colleen, thank you for coming in from Canada, PSP Investments, Richard Mack, Apollo Real Estate Advisors, and last but not least, Rob Blumenthal, Deutsche Bank Securities. Next month, it's called Condomania. 6 condominium developers explaining why they think they're going to sell their properties so well in 2006. Thank you.
Funding for the Stoller Report is made possible by a grant from the First American Title Insurance Company of New York. The First American Corporation is the nation's leading diversified provider of business information products and services that impact the major events of people's lives.